Hi, everybody. I'm Shelli Dry. I'm a doctor of occupational therapy, and I'm also the director of clinical operations at Enable My Child. Tonight, we're going to talk a little bit about fine motor skill development in ages 4 to 7. So, one of the things we want to look at, first of all, is the objectives for tonight. Of course, we're going to identify the importance of fine motor skill development. And then we're also going to compare typical development between ages 4 and 7 and some tips and tricks. We are also going to look at fun activities that we can use to develop those fine motor skills in your little ones. So why are we looking at this? Why are they important? Well, first of all, fine motor skills start developing at birth. And it's really the precision and the ability to do things very, very discreetly is what your fine motor skill development is about. I think everybody knows a lot about gross motor skill development and how important it is to get you up and walking. But if you think about eating and vision, it's all those handwriting, all that is included in fine motor. Tonight, we're just going to talk about hands. So we use our hands to kind of make selections, and we need to be able to point. We also need to be able to reach into something, grab things. We need to be able to obtain things. That's all for selection. We can also use our hands to shape and mold to objects. We use them very precisely when we need to be very, very precise about how we do things. Hands are great for socialization. We use those to contact with others. We give high fives. We shake hands. We touch each other on the arm to get attention, and sometimes we use them for hand holding. Hands are great for transporting things, and we need those for carrying things, reaching for things, being able to hold things, and of course for eating, like this guy down here. Hand skills are crucial for developing handwriting. We need those precision fine motor skills for handwriting. We also need them for being able to engage in dressing tasks, being able to button and zip, using them for our fasteners and shoe tying. Of course, discrete movements are so much more effective than using more of the gross motor movements, like moving things from your shoulders rather than using discrete fine motor movements is more tiring. So when we use those discrete movements, we get better speed and better quality. We also look at the school day, and we know that children use fine motor skills 37% to 60% of the school day. That's not all just handwriting. Handwriting is about 18% maximum of the school day. But you think about getting in and out of your lockers, being able to unzip your backpacks, being able to put on your coats when you go out to the playground. All those things require fine motor skills along with multiple other things. This is just an example of some of the things we can do with our hands. Of course, we can draw. We use them for keyboarding, but we also use them for dressing. We need them for all of our hygiene tasks. We need them for baking and cooking, definitely for eating, also for cutting, engaging in arts and crafts, for building. Think about all those things your kids love to do. Scooping and pouring, that's all fun stuff. Let's look a little bit at fine motor skills in babies. How do they develop? Where does it start? Of course, it starts down here with this little one pushing up. That's one area. You can see he's resting into his forearms, but he's also starting to push weight into his hands. And that's going to help develop those nice precision arches that we need. If you look at this top picture here, we've got this little one starting to bear weight on just one arm. She's getting a lot stronger just by reaching with one hand and bearing weight with the other. She's getting ready to pick something up out of the grass using her fine motor skills. We have a baby down here who shows you The way that reaching for objects also promotes rolling. You can see him resting over there on that side. He's starting to shift that weight and get ready for rolling. Up on top, we've got a little guy starting to build blocks. That requires such a precise movement. It requires you to open your fingers at just the right time when you have that block balanced perfectly. It's a great learning skill for babies. They love to build. This baby is crossing midline. That's so important. You need to be able to get that midline developed through the middle of your body in order to use your hands together, and also to be able to do things like pull on socks, put on shoes, anything where you have to bring your hands to one side of your body. You're crossing midline. It starts in infancy. We have a baby over here. He's doing great activities. He's got all these little things ready for him to just look at, but he's developing those fine motor skills while he's playing. Free play is so important for babies. It really gets them moving and gets them learning. And then up on top, you've got this baby, or this younger girl. She's kind of a, probably maybe around 4, toddler age, a little bit older, who's playing outdoors in the sand. She's starting that scooping and pouring. She's probably done it before, but she's really having fun. And she's out there developing her motor, her gross motor, her fine motor. She's getting her sensory skills worked up. She's really working hard on developing all of her skills through outdoor play. I'm going a little too fast. Okay, let's look at the next page, which is some of the different areas that, let's see if I can get this up. There we go. These are some of the grasp that you see in development. So when you're a baby, you start with that palmar grasp. You've really got that utensil, writing utensil fisted in your hand. You can see everything is going down towards the owner side of the hand, towards the pinky, and babies just typically scribble. As they practice that, though, they get a little bit stronger, and they start to do our next grasp over here. It's called a digital pronate. You see the baby using one finger to kind of control, but he's got the utensil more up towards the top of his hand. So that's an important grasp, because it's going to then start moving more towards a refined grasp. As you can see, these 2 fingers are starting to come in, and we want to see that happen when we're working more towards the tripod grasp. I went a little too fast again. So here we have this grasp in the bottom. That's more like a static tripod, kind of a quadrupod, a 4-finger grasp. You can see the pen is getting up to where it needs to be, or the crayon, and the child is now starting to bring his thumb and his finger together, and he's got the pen resting in his web space, and then he's using his other 2 fingers to help. And as he continues to develop, he's going to go to this beautiful grasp. This is what we want to see. This is a dynamic tripod grasp. This child actually has the grasp between 2 fingers. He's got a nice open web space here. He can do a lot of mobility with those, just his fingertips. And I love how his hand is resting here on the surface. This is the power side of the hand. Where your pinky is, that's your power. So you got it resting on the side of the surface with the forearm, giving him a little bit more stability and allowing him to get that mobility with his thumb and fingers that will help speed up some of those writing things. I think I skipped some screens. Let's look at typical development. Okay, we have our 4-year-old who is developing. They've done a lot. They've done it through that infancy that we talked about just a little while ago. They also are working now on cutting and using scissors. And they're not just cutting that straight line. They're starting to be a little more precise. They're starting to cut curved lines. They're able to manipulate puzzle pieces, not the pegboard pieces anymore, but the actual puzzle pieces where you have to put 2 items together and get the pieces lined up. They can string smaller beads. They may have been stringing the bigger beads when they were younger to work on some of those bilateral activities, but now they can move to smaller things, and they can really line that string up with that smaller hoe and get it in. They're able to draw shapes, and they're working on their pre-writing skills. all that cutting and drawing is really going to help them with their writing. As they get just another year on them, they'll start making letters. They can pour drinks if it's not too heavy of a picture, and they can do it with control and without spilling. They've also learned to fold things. They can fold paper, they can fold towels, they can start to help you a little bit with the laundry. Then we move on to our 7-year-old. Between 4 and 7, you've got so many things that have developed. Now they're writing all kinds of letters. You can see a 7-year-old can write 20 letters in a minute. They're really starting to pick up on some of that speed. They can also cut out more complex shapes, so they can go around the lines, they can make curves when they're cutting, and they can do a good job. They're got much better scissor control now. They're also able to tie their shoes. Around age 6, you start practicing tying shoes. By the time you're 7, you're really good at it. And they can color inside the lines. And when they draw a picture, other people can recognize it, and they know what it is. It makes that child feel proud. We keep jumping over these graphs. I wanted to show them to you. There are so many different grasp patterns that we use. If you look up here in this corner, we have what's called a hook grasp. This is just one of the grasps you might use when you're plugging something into a wall socket. Also when you're pumping gas for your car. This is a coin grasp. It's also a lateral pincer. And it's for putting coins into objects. It's almost a refined pincer, and you can see they've got a nice open space right here. And they're not quite tip to tip. That's the only difference between the refined pincer. Down here on this bottom one, we have a cylindrical grasp. I'm sorry, over here is the cylindrical grasp. And this one where they're holding the baseball is more of a spherical grasp. But you see how the hand cups around that object. It really forms, and that's due to all those arches that developed when you were crawling. This is a power grasp holding the phone. You want to make sure you have good stability on that phone. And the hand just moves perfectly to the phone, and it has it safely and securely. And up here, this is another lateral pincher, and it is what you use when you're turning on lights with those old string chains. Maybe your fans, your ceiling fans, you might turn on that way. So we've talked about these grasps, and this is how grasp develops throughout birth. At about age 3, I think we start to see that tripod coming out. We can see it a little bit earlier. We like to see it 3 or 4. But let's talk a little bit about how do you know when things are going wrong? What are you going to do? There's things you want to look at specifically. If you notice many of these things together, you're going to ask somebody for a little bit of help. One of the things you want to pay attention to is, does your child have difficulty holding scissors and cutting? A lot of children younger than 4, they can't hold scissors in one hand, and they do that snip, 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 but then they can't manipulate the paper. That's a problem, right? So we look at being able to hold scissors in one hand and starting to cut around the age of 4, maybe a little bit later, but not by age 7. By age 7, they should be doing a good job with scissors. If they're having a lot of trouble with letter formation or number formation, they can't get their spacing right, they're always above or below the line. You see a lot of handwriting problems, but it's really based sometimes in some other areas like visual or visual fine motor skills, or even stability, shoulder stability, and gross motor skills. If the child's avoiding fine motor activities, they're telling you there's something going on. This is uncomfortable for me. It makes me tense, so I'm just not going to do it. So you need to help them out. If they can't get an efficient grasp pattern, now I showed you the typical grasp. There's other grasp patterns besides that tripod that are effective that children use. They're not as effective, and they may not get quite the speed and precision as the tripod. But there are other grasp patterns that are effective. If they're just not efficient though, and writing is a struggle for them, If they can't hold their utensils and bring food to their mouth without spilling, then they're going to get frustrated and they need some help. If they have difficulty with fasteners, now I'm not talking about your young ones, I'm talking about that 4 to 7-year-old range. They should be taking pride in zipping and unbuttoning and being able to dress themselves. What 4-year-old doesn't love to be able to do things for themselves? Look at their handwriting. Are they pressing too hard? Are they pressing too light? Can you barely read it? That's a problem with grading those muscles. And it's going to require someone to help them learn how to grade a little bit more effectively. If your child keeps switching hands partially through the activity, you want to be a little bit concerned. Children switch hands when they're fatigued or when they haven't quite figured out where their dominant side is. Around 5 or 6, you should be starting to see a lot of dominance developing. Another problem with grading is when the child erases and they keep tearing the paper. That's so frustrating for them. And then somebody might say, oh, do it all over. And how many times can you do it over when you're just pushing as hard as you feel like you need to push? They might need some help. If your child can't point with one finger, you want to see your child be able to bring all the fingers in but one. So when they're pointing, they should be able to isolate that index finger. There's things you can do at home to help with that. And when they only use one hand, now I told you they should have a dominant hand, but they shouldn't only use one hand. They should be able to use 2 hands together in a coordinated manner. So you don't want to see the child only using exclusively one hand for everything and trying to do everything one-handed. Let's talk about a few tips you can do that are going to help you out at home. Let's look at positioning. Okay, our positioning requires our musculoskeletal and our neuromuscular systems. We have to know where we are in space, and we have to know how to adjust our body and keep our body upright. So we want to make sure that the child is in a stable position. We need to help them prepare for the activity by being sure their lower body, their feet, their legs, their hips are all stable, and that their shoulders are able to be used. I don't know why that's jumping. Let's look at how we activate multiple systems together to know where we are in space. So your sense of body awareness lets you know if you're in the correct position. Your visual sense lets you know if you're in the correct position. And then again, that musculoskeletal and neuromuscular systems, they all work together. So we have to consider the posture and the movement we need to complete the skill. We start with a good base, a good foundation. Once we get that stability, then we have a much better chance of getting effective mobility, moving our hands and arms effectively. The other thing you want to look at is alignment. You want to be sure that your child is not trying to work to the side of his body or her body. You don't want them all twisted when they're trying to do fine motor work. They should have things in front of them. They should have a nice visual field. Their head should be in alignment with the object that they're doing. Their arms need to be supported. That helps a lot. I remember I showed you that hand resting on the surface. It really allows for those fingers, those other 3 fingers to work. So we get our power side of our hand with the pinky, the little pinky side, and the ring finger. That's your power side, power fingers. Get that resting, and then you can use those distal, the mobility side of your hand, those other 3 fingers, to really be effective. And that's for painting, it's for drawing. It's not all just about handwriting. There's so many things you do with your hands. Make sure your little one has space to move. They need to be able to not be pushed up so far against the table and be so crowded in that they can't move freely. Kids don't like that. Most adults don't like that either. So let's look at some of the things you can do to strengthen shoulders. These table push-ups are really good. You know, you can see that this child is starting to, has a nice wrist flexion here. They're bearing weight into their hands. They've got those arches developing in their hands. We see the hand is up, it's not flat. That's a good thing. There's other things you can do. You can play animal walks. You can do crab walk with your little ones. You can get them to hop like a frog. That's a great one for building up shoulder strength. They're moving, pivoting over those shoulders as they hop forward. It's a lot of fun too. And then you can do duck walk. Get those hands down and start doing your shoulders side to side. You're just thinking about moving your shoulders in different ways while you're bearing weight. You can do wall push-ups. You can do table push-ups. Either one are fun. I like to tell kids, let's make this room bigger and get them to push really hard into the wall. And balloon volleyball, so much fun. You're working now on those visual skills along with working overhead to hit that ball. You want it up high. You want them working those shoulders. They need to lock that shoulder in place so they can get a good swing. What are some pre-writing skills you can do? One of the kids' favorites is salt box writing. They like to have a bunch of salt in a container and then they just draw different things in it. It doesn't have to be letters. It can be shapes. It can be lines. It can be silly things. Whatever you want to do. The idea is to get them in there using that one finger and trying to feel the letters as they move them, to feel the shapes, to feel themselves drawing. Another great thing to do when you are at that point where you're working on their name is cut their name out of sandpaper and then put that on cardboard. They can trace that with their fingers. They can put a piece of paper over the top. They can take a pencil and then kind of scribble the pencil down and watch the letters come out. It's all about having fun while you're learning. Matching letter to letter is great for pre-writing. You're starting to get that letter recognition, but they're really keying in to the differences between letters and making sure they're using their vision to match precisely. And then, of course, you've got finger paints. So much fun. It wakes up that sensory system. It gets the hands alerted. It's so good for kids. Finger painting should happen all the time. And then, of course, Play-Doh. Kids love Play-Doh. And think about all the things you can do with it. You can roll it in balls. You can just use those fingertips and get those little tiny balls. See how small you can make it. You can use shape cutters and work on strengthening when you're pushing down the shape cutter. You can do so many things with Play-Doh. We're going to talk about that a little bit more. I'll show you some other tricks. More pre-writing tricks. There it goes, jumping on me again. We look at finger isolation. You can play with cotton balls and push them into things. I'm going to show you that in just a little bit. You can work with tongue depressors. You can also do some pinching of things. You know, those Chinese finger traps are fun, but you can also pinch a tongue depressor or a small coffee stir and do a tug of war and really work on strengthening those fingertips. Plant sprayers are great. They work on both sides of the hand. They work on that power side and that precision side, and they work on strengthening. So spraying plants is a lot of fun. And then we can look at making Play-Doh snakes. You roll it out as big as you can, and then you want to do that pinch, 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 pinch all the way down. Just think about what they're working on there. They're getting that pincher, but they're also getting that sensory feel from the Play-Doh. It really helps with grading when you can get that sensation working. And then let's think about sticker play. That's so much fun. I always tell families, keep stickers with you. If you're at the doctor's office or somewhere where you have to wait, let your little one get out their stickers. They're working on their fine motor, but they're also entertained. It makes the wait go better. We want to make sure their hands and wrists are prepared for fine motor activities. So we've got to make sure they're getting stronger. One of the things you can do, it's so simple. You set your drawing paper up on a vertical surface. Tape it to the door, tape it to the wall. You can use an easel, you can buy an easel, you can make an easel. You can take a very large binder and kind of put a slanted surface up. The idea is for them to start getting that wrist back. So instead of writing with their hand and their wrist in the same level, you want them to start working on that wrist movement. Wrist should be in a little bit of extension when you're writing or drawing or coloring or having fun. Squeeze and release activities. I like to use, I have a squishy ball. I'm going to show y'all. That's a fun one. Kids like that. They like water guns. They also like to do other things, just seeing how hard they can squeeze. I like to play games like that. You know, let's see if you can squeeze this. How hard can you squeeze this? How fast can you smash this? Just getting them to use those hands for strength. Finger to palm and palm to finger activities. Now that's what we're going to talk about. I'm going to show you a little bit of what you can do with maybe tokens, poker chips. You can use those to really get them all, pick them all up in the hand, and then slide them out. You're just working on that, moving those fingers across the other. You can also do drumming. Kids like to drum, and drumming's fun. So they're drumming down, they're drumming on the side. Every time they're drumming, that wrist is going up and down. You can also have them knocking on doors. You can have them knocking on tables. It's another way just to work on that wrist, getting it a little more flexible. The other thing you want to look at is rotating pencils. So you take that pencil and you rotate it through your fingers. You turn it around to erase it. You try not to drop it. One of the fun things is taking that pencil and rolling it like this really fast and making it look like rubber. Kids love that. See what the next page has. Oh, we're going to look at the sensory systems. Can't do anything without that sensory system getting involved. There are so many different areas that the sensory system helps with, but it really helps with fine motor development. So if you think of your visual system, you need to be able to use your vision very precisely. Visual skills are a fine motor task. You don't want to be turning your head to look side to side. You want those eyes to move and look side to side. So let's talk about ambient vision and focal vision. So ambient vision is, looking at things all out around you. But then the focal vision is fine-tuning, coming in to look at things right in front of you. When you look at a blackboard and then you look down at your paper and you're copying, you're switching between ambient vision and focal vision. So important. If you can't do that effectively, it's going to slow you down and give you problems. So vision is one of our most important senses. Let's look at our surface somatosensory system. It's a lot of words, but it's really that grading, being able to know. Somatosensory is talking about your body sense, knowing what your fingers are doing, knowing how hard you're pushing, knowing that you're reaching for your cup and not going to knock it over. You have to know when you get to the cup and get your hand around it. Otherwise, you're gonna have a misjudgment and a lot of mishaps. Being able to lighten your touch, being able to put pressure effectively, requires your somatosensory system. Your proprioceptive system is your sense of body awareness. It's what information you get from your muscles and joints. Proprioceptive system, or sometimes just called prop, is very important for movement and for posture. We just talked about posture and being able to get really stable so you can have movement on top of that. It's that stability and mobility pattern. A lot of times we need to get mobile. We have to get stable before we can get mobile. We also need to be able to stabilize with one side of the body while we mobilize with the other. If you think about holding your paper down, holding your plate when you're eating, you use one side of your body for stability, holding something still. That other hand is scooping and bringing food to mouth. And then your plate's not running away. Look at your vestibular system. Oh my goodness, that's such an important system. It lets you know where your head is in space. It lets you know if you're aligned. It lets you know if you're balanced, and it makes those adjustments as needed. What kind of things can you do to help? What are you looking at with pencil grasps? You want to make O's. You want your child to be able to make O's. I like to tell them to bring two up and look through them. Pretend like they're being a spy. We talked about coffee stir tug of war. Kids love that. They have to hold on really tight. And those coffee stirs are small. I'll show you that in a little bit. Breaking the crowns. Everyone wants their crowns unbroken, but what do us OTs do? We tell you break those crowns. Give them smaller utensils, smaller writing surface. It really helps get this web space developed. When you're only able to hold with those fingertips, it gets that nice O we like. Gathering up tokens. I told you about that one. Going to show that in a little bit. And then engaging in squeeze bottle races. Put a little colored water in there. Get a couple of your kids together. Give them a water bottle. See if they can, see how fast they can fill up a box. You know, go outside, draw a box on the sidewalk or on the driveway. Give them each a different color. Let them have a race. They're going to have fun. Development should be fun. Pinching and pulling, clay or Play-Doh. We kind of talked about that one already. To show you multiple sizes of tweezers. Tweezers are fantastic. You can do so many things with them. Let's look at coordination and handwriting. What are some things you can do there? Oh, you can draw letters on the wall with shaving cream while you're in the bath. That's a lot of fun. Kids like to do that. Bonus, you're getting those towels cleaned. You can also make letter logs. Kids like to make that out of Play-Doh. They like to make that out of clay. You can make those letter logs, and then you're bending and making them into letters. Again, you're bringing in all those multiple sensory aspects of making letters. So we're not putting sandpaper down, but we're building them with Play-Doh, and then we're manipulating them. They're getting so much more feedback from that Play-Doh. It's going to help. Smiley face start is a great trick. You just put a smiley face up in that top left corner of the paper. It helps them know which side they have to start on, and it gives them a little bit of guidance as to top and bottom. You can take pipe cleaners and shape some letters from pipe cleaners. You can also make shapes. You can make triangles. You can make stars. You can do so much with pipe cleaners. A different type of sensory input than the Play-Doh. It feels a little bit different. It'll alert their sensory system and help them tune into what they're doing. Drawing on the carpet, another fun activity. Again, we're just using that sense of touch, and we're learning things in different ways, alerting our sensory system and having fun while we do it. Finger aerobics, I'm going to show you in a little bit. It's just a lot of different things, games you can do. Help strengthen those fingers and isolate them. Climbing and rock walls. Think about all the bilateral activities. Oh, all the coordination that goes into climbing. And if you're using a rock wall, you're grasping. I also, when they're younger, I like to just pile pillows on the floor, make a mountain and climb up that way. Maybe doing it arm over arm. It's the idea of doing that bilateral activity. Really good for the kids. Squirt guns, we kind of talked about those. And then ball target skills. You can do so much with just a little ball and a hula hoop or painter's tape. Draw some targets. Have the child try to throw the ball into the target. It can be a koosh bar, something where they're going to be more successful. It's not going to bounce away. Or it can be wadding up a ball of paper and throwing it into the garbage can. You're just working on those visual skills and the eye-hand coordination. It's a good thing to do. Here's our finger aerobics. I told you we'd get to them. Spider push-ups, that's a lot of fun. You make your fingers like a spider. You're pushing them into a surface, and you just up and down. See how many times you can do that in a row before you get tired. Tomorrow we're going to get a little stronger. We're going to do more. Finger puppets are always fun also. Let's do a little bit with finger puppets. Get those fingers on there, play that little duck song, wiggle them back and forth. You're really starting to work out those fingers. It's a nice way to get Get a little flexibility, a little dexterity, and some stretch in there. You can also take one hand on top of the other and give resistance. So then you're squeezing your other hand against resistance. This is something kids can do for themselves. And don't forget about that left hand if you start it with the right. Switch them, squeeze them. You can also use resistance in this one on the bottom, these finger pickups. This one down here, where you're putting your hand flat and you're trying to pick up one finger at a time. Once you get really good, use that other hand to give some resistance. Make it difficult. It's a lot of fun. And then you want to do that tip-to-tip touch. Get the finger all the way to the small finger. You can do slow, and then you can be silly and go a little bit faster. And as fast as you get, the more they're going to mistouch, and they're going to end up laughing, and that's all okay. Shadow play's fun. Make that duck bill. Put it on the wall. You've got a lot of fun. You can also do other things. You can make your hand into a snake. Shadow play is a lot of fun, and they're working on their hand skills, and they don't even know it. I'm going to get right back to questions, but right now, before we start looking at activities, if anyone has anything, you can put it in the chat box. I'll try to answer a few now and a few later. We are going to switch now and go over to look at some other things we've got going on. So let me switch that camera. And just give me a minute while you get your questions chatted. I will work on getting my camera taken care of. I'll stop this share. There we go. And now let's switch and look at what we have over here. I'm also going to take that backdrop off so you can see the activities we're going to. So as promised, we've got lots of games, lots of things we can do, things you can do at home. These are just your regular old things that you have in your house. So don't worry about going out and buying something new. Look what I have. This is my tennis ball. So I call him Mr. Mouth. I have cut a slit in the tennis ball, and I can squeeze the sides to make the mouth bigger. And then I'm going to get one of those poker chips, and I'm going to feed the tennis ball. You can use coins. You can use other things. If these tokens are too hard to hold on to, get checkers. Checkers are great. You're going to have to squeeze really hard, though, to get that mouth open. So if it gets too easy squeezing with something small, then you get something bigger where they have to really squeeze. They're really getting that hand stronger. Again, don't forget about the non-dominant side. Now, the tricky part is getting these things back out. And that is another great thing for finger skills. You just have to reach in there, and you have to use your sense of touch and feel to know when you've got a good grasp on the chips. That was 2. But again, it's all about having fun, doing silly things. Take your tennis ball, draw some eyes on it, make a mouth. What else do we have over here? Oh my goodness, this is one of the funner things. Kids love this. This is just a squeeze bottle, but you can feel the air coming out. You can take a pom-pom. And again, we're going to have races with those kids because they love them. Put your pom-pom on the surface and then blow the air out and see who can get to the finish line first. That's one thing you can do. Again, I talked about finger isolation. You can take pom-poms and, sorry, drop that. You just stuff it down in there. So you're really working on that, getting that finger into something, and you have to tighten your hand and use just one finger to get it in effectively. So that's a great thing to do. And this, you can get this at Michael's in the eyes. You can get it with the cake decorating stuff. It's just a little squeeze bottle. Very simple. Other things that kids love, here's these coffee stirs, of course, and that's that tug of war. That's a lot of fun. Hold on tight. I'm going to pull that away from you. It's a lot of fun. But along with that, this is a great strengthener, and it works great on scissor skills. Remember, scissor skills are your pre-writing. Cut straws. And did you see that fly up? That's why kids love it. They fly through the air. So you're going to make a little bit of a mess. That's okay. I have multiple tweezers. So if we're looking at picking things up with tweezers, these tweezers all are different. This one is a little bit harder to push. I got these at the Dollar Tree. So you can just pick up cotton balls and then maybe put them in a cup. Have your cup, you have your container. So we just pick them up and move them. Pretty easy. Of course, that's me. They are hard to squeeze though. So if you need something easier to squeeze, you might want to look at something like this with a longer tongs on it. Now, the longer tongs are a little bit harder to pick things up. So when you're approaching it, you have to take a different approach. And you have to squeeze and not squeeze too hard or you'll drop it. And then I dropped it. So I'm going to move on to my little ones. These are teeny tweezers, and they're probably easier for kids. But again, it's working on that pincer and it's helping them get stronger. Translating it into the cup. After you've done that for a little bit, you're going to move your cup over to the other side. Remember, we want them across the midline. So we're going to, again, pick it up, but they're going to have to, stretch and cross. Nice rotation. We want to see that. That's great for coordination. So I've shown you 3, and then the fourth one is just a little bit of a variation to the smaller green one. It's not as hard to squeeze, and it really gives them a lot of control. So if you want them to be successful, start with the little ones. Those were our tongs and our puff balls. And I like to put those again into small containers so they can work on that finger isolation if they need it. They don't always. Now let's look at some of the things you can do with fidgets. This one is really good because they're using both hands together. So they have to turn it, they have to spin it. It's not really hard. It's called loopies. What would be more difficult is if they start trying to do it with just one hand. Now that's a little bit trickier. And then the hard part, let's do that with the non-dominant hand. Ooh, that is much trickier than we're trying to spin and turn with our non-dominant hand. And again, we can go back to both hands together. When we think about strengthening and getting our wrist moving, you can think about pulling. These are some of those, they're really those like dance scarves, but you know, pull it through your hand. That's going to work. You're working on strengthening your pincer grasp. And then if you want to work on the wrist, let's have them flap. Make it a game. See if they can hit the ceiling with it. See how high they can reach. Get those shoulders going also. We have this ball. This is great for coordination. Of course, ball skills are, but you can throw it up and catch it. You can throw it against the wall, bounce it against the wall and catch it, and then you're getting that shoulder in there. And then one of the things I like to have kids do, bring it under your legs. Whoa, look at that. You're working on balance, coordination. If you're not looking, then you're also working on that proprioceptive sense. One thing I'm having to do is squeeze it. I don't know if you can see my hand, but I'm having to squeeze it when I'm passing it. Let's see what else we have over here. This is just simple things for bilateral coordination, for using both hands together. So you want to take things where they have to turn them. I'm having to stabilize with my left, and I am moving that wrist and turning with my right. And then I'm going to put it back on. And when I put it back on, I'm just going to use my fingertips and see how fast I can get it on there. I also have this little bunny, and it's just one of those wind-up toys. But again, stabilizing with one side, and I'm turning with the other. So I'm using this stability and mobility pattern to work on coordination. It's bilateral coordination, using both hands together. And then, of course, our bunny, get up. We have little jitter critters, same thing. It's just different ways to get kids engaged and work on some of the areas that's going to help their fine motor skills get stronger. I have another jitter critter. He's kind of fun. Kids love these things. They vibrate a little bit, and I always just have them hold the string up so that they can have the spider or whatever it is come towards their fingers. See, oh my goodness. This kids love, they love these things. These are just, I don't know if you can see them very well, but they're little frogs. And these little frogs are shooters. So you hook it on your fingertip and then just pull back with your other hand and let it go. Woo, did you hear that hit? Went flying through the air. I can also do that if I don't have a frog, don't have any of those toys. These little bands, hair bands, they do the same thing. That time I flew it off my thumb. A little bit different, same finish product. And then a smaller ball, back and forth, side to side. This is great. This is so good for hand development. And it's something those kids who always need something to do, they always want to fidget. This is a great thing for them to do. They can do it while they're paying attention to something else. Keep their hands busy and their mind active. We can squeeze and release, squeeze and release. So I'd show you that squeeze ball. This is one of the kids' favorites. They love it. Again, got two sides of the body. Don't forget the non-dominant side. It still needs a little bit of work too. Told you I'd show you Play-Doh. Let's do that in just a bit. I want to show you things you can do with tongue depressors. We're going to go back to Mr. Mouth here. You can have the children put it into, now I'm squeezing this mouth closed because this one's been stretched out a lot, but have them put it into things. You can use things with slots. You can make this at home. If you drink coffee or have something, a lid, you can cut a hole in it and they can just shove it right down in that hole. So they're working on, again, eye-hand coordination and lining things up precisely. So using those precision skills. I don't know if you can find these very often anymore. I've had this a while. It's a top. Kids have to use their fingertips and they have to spin it. And then they put it down on a surface and it goes. It's a lot of fun. Kids love them. They're hard to find. So we talked about cutting straws, but one of the things I have here that we haven't done yet, and this is another good strengthener for your pincer. And let me just get a cup. So this is a cup we were putting our little pom-poms in. You want children to be able to take these plastic clothespins, but be able to squeeze, put it on the edge, and release. Now that one was a little bit harder to squeeze, so I also have a variation because kids all work at different levels, and these are easier to squeeze, but they're just putting them on there. Now again, I have to make it fun, so I'm going to see, maybe time them and see how fast they can get it done, and just make it to where they're excited about this squeeze and release. Here, if you do not have clothespins, is a chip clip, and the chip clip is a lot harder. So you have to think about that. You want them to be successful. Make it challenging, but don't make it so challenging that they can't do it. This green donut is over here. It's called the bagel. Actually, not a donut. But it's over here to tell you just something you can do if your child has a hard time sitting still when they're doing fine motor tasks. Just put this in their chair. It gives them a little bit of movement, and it helps them sit a little bit longer. Again, make sure those feet are supported. If you put this in their chair and their feet are in the air, you're going to need to put a step stool or something under their feet, maybe some books, something easy if you don't have a step stool. Back to the idea of shooting things through the air, this is a simple exercise band. You can get them fairly in almost any store, but I've got knots on each side, and I can have them pull back and shoot it, and they're going to work on shoulders. I can have them put it over their head and do all kinds of fun things with it. So it's a nice little activity. And more important, it's fun. This is a Zoom ball. So it is great. You can order them online. This is not something you can usually find in the store, but it has 4 handles. So you can use it with 2 children. And what happens is they pull their hands apart, and the Zoom ball shoots up the string to the next child. Now, if your child's an only child and you don't have time to play, you can hang it up on a curtain rod, and they can do it themselves. That curtain rod becomes a second child, and they're still working on that shoulder strength, pulling it apart and seeing how fast they can get it to shoot up to the ceiling. Another really simple thing is just this foam. So again, fold it, working on folding skills. You can squeeze it to work on that strength, and then you can pretend like it's a ladder and walk your fingers up it. So you're working on many different skills. You're working on strengthening. You can work on crinkling, where you're just using fingertips to pull it in. And then that's that in-hand manipulation, where you're walking fingers up to the top. This is not something that is as easy to find, but I'm sure there's other things out there. These are just links. So you've seen all kinds of links in toy stores. These are just ones I have for shapes. But it's just a matter of pushing them together and trying to link objects together. So we just do that, and we continue. We can make a big chain. You can also do that with cardboard. You can work on the cutting skills, cutting it out, stapling or taping, making a loop, and then making a chain with cardboard. Or you can use something like this that's already ready. And then I told you Play-Doh, so let's look at that for a minute. Play-Doh, there are a lot of things you can do. I have in here scissors. So before that child has started cutting paper, if you want to just work on that squeeze and release, you can cut Play-Doh. There's, of course, the other cutters that are like a knife. And so you can start working on that back and forth skill with Play-Doh. One of the nice things that kids love to do is make shapes and cut out shapes in their Play-Doh. So let's look at something simple, loading up a shape. I'm just going to get this one that's already out. So we have this little shape, and I'm going to fill it with Play-Doh. Now, taking the lid off is tricky in itself. So let me get that lid off, and then I will show you how much the child has to do to get the Play-Doh out. So they're using one fingertip. You're going to pull it out, and then you're going to have them push it in the shape. Now this one, they have to really, I'm using my thumbs to push it, but they can make hair. So they push it up to the top. It's got holes in it. And then they can get those scissors and they can cut. I'll just get my kid scissors and cut. So they're cutting, working on cutting skills, and they're using Play-Doh to strengthen those fingers. And then we talked about some of the other things you can do with rolling and squeezing and pinching Play-Doh. Play-Doh's a lot of fun. Kids love it. I always make them do it at the table, just to decrease some of the mess, maybe. But even putting it back in the container is good. You can roll it into a ball. Try to do that with one hand. You can have them try to do it with fingertips like we talked about earlier. And then pushing it down into the container and getting that lid on. A lot of kids don't do this anymore. I'm starting to see them come back though, and they're starting to put them in fun characters that the kids love, just whatever's popular at the time. Lacing cards. That takes a lot of precision. It works on that eye-hand coordination. When you pull it out, you're having to use your fingers. And if you, I don't know if you can see, but I'm using all of my fingers to pull it out and bending and straightening my fingers effectively. So that's pulling it out, but then putting it in, they can do, they can go down, and then they have to be able to come back up. So that's a little bit trickier for kids. If they can't find the hole to come back up like that, then you might want to just have them push down, loop around, and push down again. Think about what I've been saying. You want them to be successful while they're working on this. They'll keep trying, but if they're not successful, they're not going to work as hard for you. I think that's all I had to show you all tonight. It's been a pleasure. I will now answer any questions you have, and then we'll finish up.